Welcome to the Nurturing Fathers Podcast, a show dedicated to helping men succeed at the most challenging and rewarding job they'll ever have, being a dad. Your hosts are Mark Perlman, the creator and founder of the Nurturing Fathers program, and his son, Corey Perlman, who facilitates the program at the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary and is also a father of 2 young children. It's time to add tools to your Nurturing Fathers toolbox. Mark and Corey, take it away.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Nurturing Fathers podcast. As always, I'm Corey Perlman, here with my dad, Mark Perlman.
Hello, everybody. Happy to join you all. Happy to be here with Corey.
Today, we're having an interesting topic that is near and dear to my heart. We're going to talk about specifically fathers and their daughters.
And we're going to change roles a bit here since I am the father of 2 now very grown sons. So I have never really had the opportunity to parent a female or daughter. Corey, on the other hand, his firstborn was the beautiful Talia Ruby Perlman. So I'm going to ask some of these questions and let Corey comment on them from his experience both with parenting a daughter and nurturing fathers. The one thing in my thought about this as I was creating the curriculum is, well, what the daughters get from their moms. And it's pretty clear that they get the whole female lineage from their moms, whatever the female mannerisms are, ways of being in the world, skills, whether they be in the kitchen or in the child rearing or whatever they're doing professionally, but they get the whole female piece of what it means to be a woman from watching their moms. So then what do they get, what the daughters get from their dads? It's a little more puzzling issue, and it's not as obvious as being born into a female body and looking at the female for your prompts. So what do they get from their dad? Well, what I feel that they get from their dad as an overview is, how does it feel to relate to a man? So that first male-female relationship, I strongly feel that that one that's patterned possibly for a lifetime is, what does she expect from a man? How does she expect to be treated? How does she expect to be viewed? What is that male-female relationship like? She also, I think, learns it from watching mom and dad interact in terms of that adult couple. But the primary feeling of being with a man and around a man, I think her father is the resident male in her life.
Yeah, so I think a good way of doing this, which will be interesting, is I'll give you a little bit of how I've attacked that, I guess, those relationships with Talia, and then maybe from your perspective, from your experience, sort of how you see that from a 10,000-foot view, because I can say that with all sincerity that I've done obviously the best job that I can, but there's times that I feel like I may be doing something a little too much this way or too much that way. So it'll just be interesting perspective. As I always say in the Nurturing Fathers program, I'm a student, not the teacher. So wanting to constantly learn and get better. But
that's great to hear, Corey. And I've watched you live that, and I greatly respect you for it, because even I, as much as I know about fathering and have made this my profession, you never are the expert. You never know it all. Our kids are so complex and so different that it's ever moving. And so approaching it with some humility and an openness to learning, I think, is the key. And I really appreciate that about you.
Thank you. So I think it really, if it boils down to one word, it's relationship, or relationships. And so I think that the way I've sort of structured my connection with Talia has been my relationship directly with her, and then also my relationship with her mom, and just really being very, very in tune with the fact that she's always watching. So one thing I think we can all agree on is that our kids are always watching, and that they're super connected to how we are interacting with them and how we're interacting with other people. And so I've been very proactive, I feel like, or just really kind of aware of how I interact with Jess, my wife, and of course, how I interact with Talia. And so some of the things that, I think about in my discussions with the family is making sure that Jess looks like and is an equal part of the relationship. There's no hierarchy between myself and Jess. In fact, if there probably was, Jess would be at the top and I'd be secondary. And I think that aligns with one of maybe the issues, is that mom sets a lot of the rules. And so I think at times, Talia almost sees me a little bit like as second in command to mom, which I think, I feel generally okay with. But then when there's times where I feel like there's a little bit of disrespect happening towards me versus mom, that's where maybe the challenge lies. I don't know what you think about that.
Well, it's a little bit of role reversal in that in most households, dad is kind of a more heavy-handed one.
Yeah.
But that's traditional. Things are changing, so each family now is more working it out for themselves. I think that role is more comfortable for Jess and her lineage. This might be more comfortable for you. What it sounds like to me is that you have the opportunity to be a little more softer as a male, but when you raise your voice at all and I'm around you all, they get it, pay attention, the kids. You don't have to do that much more except raise that male voice, and I see them kind of stop in their tracks and pay attention. So they are not, I don't think, generally disrespecting you, and I think you definitely have their respect. Remember, respect and fear is not the same thing. We'll talk about that later, whether they fear you or not, and whether it is. I think they definitely respect you. Talia definitely respects you.
Yeah, and I think gosh, that's been such a fabric of our relationship, and something that I've just, you know, want to make sure of day in and day out, is that fear is not a part of our relationship. And again, I always look at things that, there's two sides to every coin. And so as much as I feel like sometimes that it's hard to get her to listen sometimes, or to take my direction, or there's so little fear, and I'm proud of that, that on the other side of that, she can take advantage of that, right? It's very difficult for me to be able to, ensure that she does something, because there's just no way that it's going to go beyond my voice, and so I struggle with that sometimes, but I'm rely on the fact that I know that in my heart of hearts that there's never going to be that fear, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, and what I see you doing is implementing the discipline piece at that point. I see you saying, Talia, that's the second time I've mentioned. The third time, expect this. You lose this, or this, you'll have to stop to give, or you'll give this up. And she's smart, has a great sense of herself, and is very assertive. She's going to make a wonderful adult woman in the world. And it's a challenge to parent, for sure. But she's smart enough not to try and cross those lines and really diss you or and give up those things that are precious to her.
So one of the things that goes along with this, in terms of fathering daughters versus fathering sons, because I have one of each, is what their currency is. So going along the lines of, so if we don't want either of our children to fear us, and obviously our daughters, then when it comes to discipline, we have to figure out alternative ways to discipline or to teach or whatever we want to talk about without using our hands. And so I usually use the term currency, like figuring out what our kids' currency is, so we can use that as leverage, if you will, to get them to go in the right direction. And what I've noticed, Dad, is that the currency of daughters and sons is very different. So with my son, the typical currency for him, which would be motivation, what he really wants is, video game or screen time, mostly around, Pokemon, and very much video game heavy, and sports and things of that nature. Some of the more typical boy things. Very different with Talia. And that doesn't mean that these are kind of generalizations, but with Talia, what I've noticed is she could care less about video games. And although she does love her TV time, her currency really is her connection with her friends and being able to go out and play and to spend that time. So really being able to laser focus in what each of our kids' currency is, what means most to them, allows us to be able to use that as our consequence, the negative consequence, when they're not listening or doing what they need to do.
As the adult male in the home and your daughter, from when she was born until her 9-year-old self now, what do you feel she needs from you? What would you say Talia needs from you?
Talia needs from me, she needs validation. Talia is very much like me. So she constantly needs to know that she's valued, that, I think my words matter a lot to her. So she needs a sense of value based upon whether or not I've seen daddy watch this, daddy watch this, daddy watch this. And I'm not sure, because she's my only daughter, if that is a girl versus boy thing, or if that just is Talia's personality. But I can tell you that more so than Milo, Talia really needs validation that daddy respects her, daddy values her, appreciates her, sees her talents, all those type of things. So I have to be super aware of when she's looking for my attention, because if I'm not giving her that attention, she'll immediately go to something negative to get that attention.
Right.
So seeing some of the activities that she's doing, gymnastics is a big one where Daddy, watch this somersault, watch this cartwheel, whatever, and being very conscious of stopping whatever I'm doing, focusing on that. And then, and I'm sure other dads that are listening to this, we got to really work on this, is being super intentional with our reaction. Like we just talked about in our last episode, bottling the emotions of excitement. And I remind myself in those moments, like, don't be afraid to be excited if she knocks something out of the park. Don't fake it. But if she does a perfect handstand, freaking celebrate that, man. That was an awesome handstand. Don't be afraid to like get excited if you really are excited that she just nailed something, because they love that, and sometimes I think we bottle our excitement because we feel awkward or uncomfortable about that, but that's exactly what they're looking for.
Yeah. And I think there's something in the father's positive regard, as you're saying, Corey, that feeds the girl's self esteem in a unique way. Again, I see dads and moms as equal in their influence, but different. And I think those differences are beautiful because kids get something different and powerful from each of them. And when they have both influences, they're getting the full script. There's something in the father's positive regard and the excitement that you showed Italia that feeds her self-esteem and her feeling of what she can be in the world in a unique way, especially from the male voice, especially from the father. I'll never forget in Sarasota, Florida, where I live, years ago, there was a woman superintendent of schools who was revered. She was excellent, powerful, kind. She ran the schools great. We were at the best we ever were. I saw her give a speech where she started the speech to say, I would like to start this by giving my deepest thanks to my father, for whom I would not be here if it wasn't for him. And there was something in that that said to me, wow, here is this woman in this incredible position of power and success, and she is feeling that something in that father influence helped her get there.
Yeah, that's great. And I think a couple of things that come to mind with my experience with parenting Talia and some of the guys who have daughters, and then I'd also be interested in your perspective on some of these, Dad. I think about the friendship. I think that men, especially as parents, that we have to be super careful about wanting our kids to like us and be friends and connected. I think that's just sort of a natural tendency with guys who are really good about, friendships and things of that nature. And me sort of parenting Talia almost into the fact of that she sees me as her dad, but also like a playmate, and as a friend. And I'm totally good with that. But when, again, it comes to the discipline action and listening to me and things of that nature, I just noticed that she listens to Jess more so than she does me, and it seems to come a little bit easier for Jess to discipline her. And I think part of that is Jess really draws the line between being the mom and being a friend, and I think that I blur that line more so, and I think Jess would agree with that. And I think there's pluses and minuses to that. What do you think
It
of that?
strikes me as nice to have both.
Yeah.
I think we had that in our family too. I think in some ways your mom was a little stricter maybe, and you sort of had you responded to that. And I definitely disciplined. I didn't abandon that, but I was also, I mean, I grew up as a boy. I was playful too.
Mhm.
So I was very much playful and very much goofing around. And I think you had two strong parents that you drew from. And I think, again, the bottom line is hopefully you got what you need from that. So I wouldn't make too much of a case about that differences, sort of viva la difference. It sounds like your kids have gotten a lot of good stuff from both of you. Knowing that she will be choosing men in her future life based in good part on her experience with dad, what would you like those choices to look like? What would you hope she gets? What would you hope maybe that guy would look like down the road that would make you proud and comfortable?
Yeah, so I think about that a lot. I'm sure the guys that are listening to this that have daughters, regardless if it's a male or could be a female, and that's totally okay too. But whatever the relationship that they come into, I think the common theme that we hear, and just in case you haven't heard it, is the relationship with us as the dad is the first relationship that they have with a man. And so it's a very, very important one. And I think about that a lot. And so, I want, respect to be paramount. And so again, I see it obviously with Talia, but I think it's really important that she sees it with Jess. And I think that one of the big takeaways for us as dads and as men and as spouses is to really, I think what I notice a lot in my world with other men is they do a really good job of showing respect and all the things you want your daughters to see to your daughters. But I think where we could get better at is doing that with our wives.
Yeah.
And so I think it's easy to do it with our daughters because, they're those little beings and we know that it's coming where they're going to have relationships. And so we just, we get on our knees and we just, we love them and we respect them and we open the door for them. And, they're our little princesses and our babies, and that's great. But then we're just like, oh, honey, quiet down, or whatever. I'm watching the game right now. Yeah, whatever. And they see all that, man. And I'm not critiquing anybody. I'm critiquing myself.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really important that we remind ourselves that they're watching that relationship too. And so are the boys, by the way.
Yeah, they are. We're going to speak about role modeling in a podcast in the future. So we're right on the edge of that. All these themes, all the podcasts, everything in Nurturing Father interconnected.
They do.
One supports the other. There's a John Prine line that just came. John Prine, something music that my sons grew up with. Little pitchers have big ears. And that's the truth. They are listening, they are watching all the time. And our relationship with our spouses is a model for them of what a male-female relationship, just like the dad is the male in residence, the mom and dad and how they interact is the model of what a male-female relationship's about. So yes, I appreciate your awareness of that and your consciousness in terms of how you relate to Jess as a role model, not only for its own sake, the marriage, but for the sake of both your children, sons and daughters.
Yeah, and it's the common words would be like kindness and respect. And Talia also sees when anyone uses their hands. I mean, it is a big no-no, and it doesn't matter what the situation is. If Milo reacts toward Jess in a physical way, I'm very careful with that. Now listen to this, guys. This is the thing we have to be super careful with because it can be an easy, natural reaction. We can get very physical with our sons, right? So Milo hits Jess, slaps her, pulls her hair, pinches her, bites her. And my reaction to Milo, Talia's watching as well. So if I run over and put my hands on Milo, that's a picture image that Talia sees that the man is supposed to go over and fix it using his hands. Well, that's not exactly right either. I got to walk over there with my emotions intact, sit down with Milo and say, buddy, we cannot use our hands on anyone, especially our mom. And here's the consequence it's going to follow, whatever the case may be. But I certainly can't react emotionally because, again, that's exactly what Talia's seeing and it's going to model down the road.
Well, the end product of the worst of that, which we're right on the cusp of now, so I will mention it, although we don't dwell on these negative things that much in Nurturing Fathers podcasts, is the domestic violence piece. The devastation of domestic violence in a household is not only to the woman and to the couple, but it's to the children because of what they see. For the daughter to see that somehow violence is okay to women or as a problem-solving mechanism is devastating to them, but they may develop a tolerance or an expectation that it's okay because it's what mom and dad did. So I'm just going to mention this as a outlier, hopefully, in our discussions in our relationships. But violence toward women in the family is about the worst thing we can do to our children. That goes for verbal violence as well, because one of the things our daughter is learning is how does an adult male and adult female fight? How do they disagree? How do they resolve conflict? And she's absorbing that more by what we do and what she hears. So part of this self-consciousness and awareness needs to extend to the verbal part of how do we resolve conflicts as adult male and female.
Great point. And another layer to this, guys, that we can really focus on is our relationships with all women, right? So first of all, it could be, if we're in a blended family of any kind, it could be, a new stepmom in the relationship. It could be your ex-wife, which is obviously a critical relationship that they're watching on. And even when things are not good or toxic or whatever the case may be, again, I mentioned this in the divorce podcast with you, Dad. You did a really good job of protecting the respect and that type of thing of my mom when you guys went through the divorce, which I really appreciate. You never said anything bad towards her or that kind of thing. And I always remember that as a kid. And then women outside of our homes, that we interact with, nurses and coworkers, and all that stuff, they're watching all that kind of thing. And if you're at Starbucks, wherever you are, just that the interactions at all times when Talia is with me, her teachers, I just want her to know that I respect them as human beings, and that type of thing, because I know she's watching that. A couple of things, kind of winding this down a little bit, of things that I focus on with Talia as my daughter is rituals, like our Friday mornings that we go to school with, bringing coffee to her teachers that I know she just loves, just putting that energy and time in with her, the consistency, knowing that, I travel a lot, but there's just certain things. I never miss games. I don't miss some of those things together. One-on-one time, I take her with me on a trip every year and we spend that quality time together. I think, as I always say to my guys, we can do a lot wrong in this journey of being a dad, but just being there and staying connected and consistent solves a lot of those problems. So I think that's one big one, the rituals with them. And the other thing that I think that we're super good at, and so that we need to double down on, is play. We're really good as men at playing. And so we think that that's a son thing, but that's not. I love playing with Talia. We have some fierce games of Blink. We have some fierce games of Uno. We have some fierce games of lacrosse. We have some fierce games of who's the best cartwheeler. I'm working on that. So far, she's got me on that. I've also hurt my neck a few times on those battles, but we play a lot and we have a lot of fun and we're very physical with each other. But there's also obviously those boundaries and things of that nature as she gets older, and I make sure to protect those. And here's one other thing, guys. When she says no, and Jess helps me with this a lot, I follow that answer right off the bat, and she says, no, 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 that hurts. Stop. I stop. Because I want her to know that her voice matters and that type of thing. So little things like that. But I think we're really, really good at play. So doubling down on that with our daughters is great.
You are. I love observing it because you play in many ways the same way with Talia as you do with Milo, the little boy, and she loves it. She's very physical. She loves her body in motion. She loves spinning. So it's great to see that. You guys go to daddy-daughter dances. Now, that's something unheard of when I was a father many, many years ago, young father. Probably 5 years running, you've gone with Talia to daddy-daughter dances in Atlanta, but with 400 men and their daughters or more. Tell us a little bit about what that's about.
Yeah, I mean, it's a moment that we both look forward to and cherish every year. And I'm lucky in Atlanta, we have such a great daddy-daughter dance. But as I've gotten more connected into the fathering community, I see it happening all over the country and all over the world. And you see it on Facebook all the time. And it warms my heart to see that. And yeah, I think it's a foundation of a lot of the work that you and a lot of the men have done over the last 20, 25 years to show that this is such a movement that you're seeing it all over the place. But it is a special time for Talia and I. And if any young fathers that are, have little girls that are coming up, I'd say age about 3 to 4 to 5 is when I started bringing tea. One tip that I will give you on these daddy-daughter dances that has actually been hard for me to follow. So heed my advice and don't do as I did. And that is, a friend of mine said, Corey, I don't go with any other couples, like dads or anything like that. It is just me and my daughter. And in fact, whenever I see him at the dance, I can say hi to him one time, but that's it, man. He is on the dance floor with his daughter and he does not talk to anybody else, and neither does she. And I think that's really cool. My daughter is very, very much into her friends and such. So it has become a little bit of, we get there and she hangs out with her friends. She spends some moments with me and I really try to keep that connected. But sometimes she's having the time of her life, and I'm okay with that. But making it as intentional as you can of you and her, going out to dinner, just the two of you, spending those quality moments and the dance floor, just the two of you, are really important. So I learned that from him.
So I want to wrap my part up here with 2 photo images that I'm going to share verbally that just stay with me. One is the funniest thing I've ever seen, and that's Corey and Talia dressed up for the daddy-daughter dance. They're sitting on the staircase in their home, all in their finery. She's dressed up like a beautiful little girl in very adult clothing, maybe has a little bit of makeup on. Corey's in a suit. They're looking great. They're sitting on the stairs. And as the picture's being shot, Milo, at 2 years old, photobombs the top of the stairs. And there he is looking like a cherub in this little picture. It is hysterical. The second thing is another daddy-daughter dance photo with Talia's dressed probably 7 years old, again in mature clothing and a little makeup, and she's looking just beautiful. And now they're standing together. But I have this picture on my desk in my office because it is so moving to me that Talia is leaning against her dad with her arm around his waist. He's got his arm around her shoulder. Her body is just relaxed against his, and she puts her little head right against his. So she's leaning on him. And in that picture, it shows me that she is so comfortable with this male figure that she is just 100% comfortable in his presence. And that is one heck of a thing for a dad to manage and to achieve. So, Corey, whatever you're doing, man, I am really proud and just happy for you and for her that she is that comfortable with you as a male. And my guess is she's not going to attach herself to anybody in the future that she's less comfortable with.
Well, I appreciate that, man. We as dads, I think we're our own worst critics sometimes. And I think there's always ways for us to improve. But those moments where I can tell she feels, very, very safe, in my presence and in my arms and that type of thing says that, yes, we are doing something right. So thank you for acknowledging that. And it continues. She's 9 years old going on 15. And for those of you who know
Absolutely.
her, so I'll be asking for a lot more help.
We'll do another one of these podcasts on the 15 years.
Help me.
On the teenage years.
Help me. Yes. Well, thank you guys for listening in on this one. This has been a fun one. And hopefully Talia will listen to this years later and I'll super embarrass her, as years go on. So
thanks for listening, everyone.
Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to the Nurturing Fathers podcast. Have questions or comments? Join the conversation at facebook.com/nurturingfathers or email us at nurturingfathers@gmail.com.